Hello everyone, and welcome to my presentation about database security. My name is Amr Ghanem, and today I'll be discussing with you the importance of database security and the various methods of attacks which exploit the vulnerability of database security. Now, throughout the presentation, I've divided it into sections. Hopefully it will be done in 3 sections. We will go into detail in each section depending on the topics in such sections, depending on how it's divided. Hopefully now you'll be able to see it. Now we will explore the different types of SQL injection, their attacks, the consequences, and how to prevent our database against such threats. So let's get started. Now, as you can see, this is section 1. Section 1 will be divided into introduction, what is SQL injection, and the types of SQL injection attacks. So let's begin with the introduction. Now, as you can see here, it states database security, the importance of protecting sensitive data from unauthorized users, and threats are SQL injections, data breaches, and more. However, let's give a brief description or talk more about the topic. So in today's digital age, a database is central for almost all of our day-to-day applications and services that we use. So database security is crucial because it protects our sensitive data, financial records, personal information, confidential business data, and such information that we do not want unauthorized users to access. Now, ensuring the security of the database, especially our database, is vital to prevent unauthorized access. Unauthorized access, as explained, could be due to SQL injections, data breaches, sometimes due to malware. Now, our focus today will be to talk about the SQL injection attacks, which are among the most relevant and dangerous threats to database security. So let's go to SQL injection. Now, SQL injection, if we look at the definition, it says SQL injection is a technique where attackers exploit vulnerabilities in database queries. Now, an example would be, as you can see here in the image, and I've wrote it down also, it says select star from users where username equals admin -- and password equals password. Now, this is an example of how the hacker or the unauthorized user would do it. So what does it do? Unauthorized data access, data modifications, and more. This means that this unauthorized user, if they were to inject our SQL, they could get sensitive information, which is our information, and they could even modify it, or they could even delete it. Modify it as in amending some stuff or changing them. That's what I meant. So SQL injection is basically a technique where attackers exploit vulnerabilities in the database queries to manipulate the database and gain unauthorized access to the data. Now, this attack occurs when user input is not properly sanitized. So let's say that the database is being used by a not so professional person, or someone that's not really sure of what they're doing, or they're new to database. They don't have much of an experience. So this would actually be a benefit to the hackers and unauthorized users, since they rely on such personnel in a company not knowing or not actually able to perform their work so well, which gives them the advantage of gaining access to this data. So in this query, the example that I've given, which is the select star from user where user equals admin and password equals password, an attacker could modify the input and bypass authentication, leading to unauthorized access. Basically, they'll get access to all of the data inside, or all of the data inside our database. Now, the SQL injection attacks can result in data thefts, data loss, and the serious consequences, since sometimes companies might be working on super secret or classified projects, and hackers or unauthorized users, let's say from other companies or competitor companies, or even a third party that has nothing to do with the product that the company is doing, might gain access and they might leak their stuff online. So that would be a brief description of what SQL injection is and how it affects the company, or let's say how it affects the owners of the database. Now let's talk about SQL injection attacks. So injection attacks, we have 3 types. in-band SQL injection, blind SQL injection, and out-of-band SQL injection. Now, in-band SQL injection is error-based and union-based. Here you'll just see a small description, 2 to 3 word description. However, as we move on, we'll get more into the topic. You also have blind SQL injection, which is Boolean based and time based, and you have out of band SQL injection, less common but dangerous. So the last one, which is out of band SQL injection, is not really a common one. It is dangerous, however, it's not really a common one. So we'll not be covering this throughout the presentation. So we will not talk about it since it's the least common type. However, we will be focusing on in-band and blind SQL injection. So now we've moved on to section 2. Hopefully from section 1 you gained a small brief explanation or understanding, let's say, of what SQL injection is, and I think before we talk about the importance of preventing it and the dangers, you already have an idea in your mind of what this could do or what this could lead to. So now let's talk about section 2, which is speaking about in-band SQL injection, blind SQL injection, and finally the consequences of SQL injection. So let's begin with in-band SQL injection. As you can see how it works, a small explanation. Since it's error-based and union-based, you expect from the error-based part that it's manipulating error messages to retrieve data. So you know, sometimes when you're on your laptop and you get an error message and it says cancel, okay, then you try to do this stuff again and it says an error message. Keep this in mind while we go through the explanation, since it's somewhat related. So let's delve deeper into the topic. Now, error-based SQL injection, in this method particularly, the attackers manipulate error messages to extract information about the database structure and data. By crafting SQL queries and intentionally generating errors, the attackers can gain insights into the database. So the error message that comes to you, that you ignore it or you just try again thinking that it's just a system error, sometimes these unauthorized users or hackers, they force the system to have an error message in order to get the information that they want. Now let's talk about the union-based aspect of it. The union-based SQL injection, here the attackers use the union SQL operator to combine the results of multiple queries. This technique allows attackers to retrieve data from different databases, so they'll be able to retrieve information from the database, or let's say the databases that we have at the company or school, university, or for the example, by amending their original queries. So they have a queries that's, let's say, select from database 1, 2, 3, the following information. They'll be able to amend it to select from database 1, 2, 3, different information. And doing this once and twice and 3 times, and along with the error messages that they do, they'll be able to retrieve the data that they want, or maybe gain access to data that they did not know that was there. So let's move on and go to blind SQL injection. Now, as we can see from the name, this one is blind, meaning that they're not sure what's inside. They're not sure what they're looking for. They're looking for something, that yet they're not sure how they're doing it. However, in the first part, in-band, they knew what they're looking for. They were creating error messages to get the information that they want. Yet here, it's quite different. So here it's Boolean based, injecting conditions to infer database on true and false responses. So basically their main operation is based on true and false responses. Now let's say here for the Boolean based aspect, the attacker injects SQL queries that result in true or false conditions, and based on that response they can know what to do next. Now, since it's also a time based, using time delays to deduce data from response time. What does that mean? So basically you know, when you're using your device and maybe you and your friend, you're trying to use the device, watching a video at the same time or playing a game, and someone has a delay. Yeah, well, hackers or unauthorized users in this example, they add conditions that cause delays in the database response, so that the response does not come immediate, or it takes more than it usually does, makes more time. By observing this delay, the attacker can deduce information about the database. So they'll check for the delay, they'll study the delay, check how much of a delay there is, and they'll be able to take the information from the database. Now let's move on to the consequences of SQL injection. Now, as you can see here, of course, data theft and data loss. as we explained from the beginning, we have data theft. Basically, they'll get access to our data, steal it, maybe valuable information, sensitive information, stuff that we don't want anyone to know. Personally, for me, I wouldn't want anyone to know my bank details, my card details. If I were in a company, I wouldn't want people to know the information of my project or a project that I've been working on. Maybe for a bank, the sensitive information of their clients and customers. So it differs from company to company or organization to organization. However, it falls all under the same category, data theft. We don't want our information to be stolen. So this is a consequence of SQL injection. They will steal our information. We also have data loss, since their target or their focus might not be to steal just information. Their target might be to steal the information and then delete it. So they'll have the information and we won't anymore. So let's say the company is working on a research project they've been working on for 3, 4, 5 years, and this unauthorized user accessed the data, took the research, took the analysis, took the information, and deleted everything from the database. This means that all of the 3, 4, 5 years of work went down the drain. They don't have any information at the moment, or they might have it backed up somewhere else, yet now this person took the information, so the data is not classified anymore. It's out there. And such data theft or data loss, let's say I was a customer at a bank and I recently heard that this bank was under attack. A lot of information was stolen and a lot of information was lost from them, so they lost the data. This could cause reputational damage, since now I'd want to change bank. I wouldn't want to work with them again. Same thing goes on to a company. Let's say the same example, we give them our information, they're working for us, and recently they've been hacked. An authorized user took the data, took the information, deleted it from their database. Now I wouldn't want to work with them, since their reputation is not as it was. So this would actually give a greater idea of why data security is important and how such threats could actually damage the reputation of a company or a person or a bank, let's say. So now we've reached section 3. I can see that we're moving quickly, which is good. Now let's delve into section 3, which states how to prevent SQL injection, what is database forensics, and the forensics tools. Now let's begin with how to prevent SQL injections. Now, preventing injection. Now, throughout the explanation, I want you to think of SQL and the injection as the image that you can see. You can see SQL here as a cylinder shape and the injection coming as a needle. Think of it this way while we're learning more about the topic, so that you'll gain a more and better, easier understanding of what we're doing. So here we have the prepared statements, input validation, least privilege access, and regular audits. Now let's talk more about this topic. So preventing SQL injection attacks is crucial to maintaining the security of your database. Here are some of the best practices, which are the 4 that we've listed now. So let's start with prepared statements. Use parameterized queries that separate SQL code. So we need to separate the SQL code from data input, preventing attackers from injecting malicious SQL. So let's think of this in a different way. Remember how I said that you need to think with the injection as if it's a needle? So we should use actually parameterized queries. So this query will be within parameters that separate the SQL code from the data input. So we need to separate the SQL code from the data input, the code that we're using from the data that's being entered, in order to prevent the attacker from injecting the malicious software or the malicious SQL inside our database. This would be how we would prepare the statements in advance to prevent such injections. Now, the input validation, we must always sanitize our user input by validating and filtering it to ensure it doesn't contain harmful SQL commands. So you need to always check your work, check what you're doing, check the commands that you're entering, check the SQL code that you wish to write before writing it, in order to make sure that you did not include any harmful SQL commands by accident. They might not seem harmful at the moment, however, they might be an advantage, or let's say a way in for the unauthorized user later on. Now, the least privilege access. Now, we need to limit user permissions to only what is necessary for their role, reducing the potential impact of an attack. So let's say we're working at a company and you have management, HR, leaders and agents, and different departments. I wouldn't give access to all of the employee information to managers, since the correct way or the appropriate way is to give such access to HR, since they're related, or they actually work with information of the workers, or information of the agents of the company. Like, I would give certain limitations to employees depending on their role. So let's say employee A is a manager, employee B is just an employee under employee A. I wouldn't give information of the colleagues of employee B to employee B. Such information, the data, the information such as salaries, a previous work experience, their emergency contact numbers, all of such information would be given to the manager, and in some cases the managers won't even have access to that information, since it would be related to HR. So it really depends on giving the employees, or giving the person their right, like the specific permission, or let's say the permissions that they need to get the job done. We don't need to give them more permissions than what they need. Such thing would be very or let's say a very good method of security for when creating a database and using SQL. Since let's say we have the manager of the system, or the person who's in charge of the database, they'd have access to everything, yet certain employees, if they're working on a certain set or a certain part of the database, they have access to that part only and not the other parts. So now regular audits, it's basically just conducting regular security measures and assessments to make sure that everything is well, and fixing any errors or vulnerabilities that we find through the system. So regular audits are really important, since we could make sure to have a different set of eyes always auditing the work, to check that we won't be under attack any time in the future, or to prevent any small ins and outs that the unauthorized user could access. So now, what is database forensics? We need to talk about database forensics. Now let's see the definition. It's the process of investigating and analyzing the database security incidents. And what's the importance of it? It's recovering from attacks and securing evidence. So basically this is the definition and the importance. However, let's talk about it more in a different way. So database forensics, it is the process of investigating and analyzing database security. So we would check on the security for our database, we would analyze it, we would study it, we would have teams, members come and study the relationships between the database, how the database works, and everything related to it. Since this involves examining the database to identify any document or detail that could lead to an attack or an access point, or have the team gather all of the legal proceedings in order to make sure that we cannot be attacked in any way or the other. So database forensics is basically crucial for the understanding of how an attack occurred. It also helps us prevent future attacks and holding attackers accountable. Since let's say someone's able to attack us and we were able to find them who such a person was, or what the organization that attacked us is, we'll be able to, in some case, sue them for stealing such or accessing such sensitive data. And this would basically help us get a more comprehensive understanding of database security and the strategies that we must implement for future cases. So let's check the forensics tools. Since we have different tools, however, we'll be focusing on two of them. We have the Cellebrite and Database Browser. So the first one specializes in mobile and database forensics. So as you can see, basically it specializes in mobile and database forensics. So we're talking about mobile devices, and it's widely used by law enforcement and agencies sometimes for the forensic analysis to recover data and analyze security incidents. So they use this basically in, let's say, organizations that are working under the law or working with the government to make sure that everything is well and no one is being attacked. Now you have the database browser, which is an open source tool for browsing and analyzing database. Such an open source tool that allows for browsing and analyzing databases. It's useful for forensic analysis of database of the databases actually, content and structure, since once they use such a tool to analyze, they study the database well, they know what to do, what needs to be done. This would help them implement newer security measures in the future and working on a newer method, or let's say a newer way of protecting the data and having all of the information that they want in a secure place. Now here I also have use cases, so situations where each tool is most effective. This is where we'd list them. So as said, the database browser is ideal for examining database structures, while the other option would be in scenarios involving mobile devices. As you can see here in the image, this is an example of a mobile device and how we'll be able to analyze it using the forensics tools and hopefully protect it. That would be it for today. Thank you for your attention, I guess, and I would like to conclude that database security is crucial for protecting sensitive data from unauthorized users and unauthorized access of hackers, let's say. SQL injection attacks are a really important and significant threat that we all must know, we all must be aware about, and we all must study or at least learn more in order to prevent for future cases. But with the right preventing measures and forensics tools, we can hopefully make sure that our database is secure and without any risk of being accessed by unauthorized users. If you have any questions or would like to discuss anything further, please leave a comment. I'll make sure to get back to you with an explanation, or I'll make sure to reach out and explain the topic better. Thank you for your time again, and goodbye.